First things first, I'm gonna give my thoughts on the animated Mulan. I think it's great. Not perfect, but I really like it. Mulan is my favorite Disney princess and is such an inspiration. What's all this talk about Ariel being an inspiration? Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. I also thought it had some funny comedy in it and some nice songs. As for my thoughts on the sequel, it doesn't exist. So Disney decided to make a live-action retelling because, well, they're Disney. Even though I'm not a fan of the live-action remakes, I was excited about this one, mainly because it looked like it was going to take a more epic and serious approach. I mean, the original was a lot of fun, but it would also be interesting to see this kind of take on it. However, most people slammed the remake before it came out for petty reasons. Oh, the songs aren't in it, and Mushu isn't in it. These elements didn't really add anything to the original. I don't hate Mushu, I just don't get why people hold him up to this insanely high standard. He only has like 3 funny lines. As for the songs, well, as good as they are, the movie still would have worked without them. I personally didn't mind that they were changing things up. Until I actually watched it. I'm just gonna start by saying that complaining that it's not like the original isn't criticism. Explaining how those changes are bad is criticism. For example, Mulan's characterization in this film is completely ruined. Remember how in the original she wasn't always a fighter? She was just a regular girl who didn't even dream of fighting. She only went into war to protect her father, but she went through struggles while trying to be the best that she could be. She eventually learned to use her smarts to think her way out of situations, using mental strength and determination, and I felt that was a great message. All of that is missing in this bland retelling. She's just a perfect character throughout, even when she was a kid, because she was born with the power of Chi. What? Yep, that's right. According to the movie, women can't be strong unless they have some magical power inside of them. Apparently some of them also can't make good Disney movies without it. I know people pointed this out already, but they did the same BS in Rise of Skywalker with Rey. Having the powers of Palpatine just makes her a badass. It's just ridiculous. Mulan shows no struggle, making her a completely uninteresting character. I don't get why Disney does this, but it seems like they think a character having flaws is a sign of weakness. But in reality, people have to work hard before they make it to the top. It's how people grow, and the way they go about it just seems sexist, which is what the original was trying to fight against. I would have forgiven it to some extent if they explained that she's been training ever since she was a child to become a fighter, but nah. She's just skilled because of midichlorians. This movie has the message of not being afraid of who you are, which is a good message, but they don't give us a reason as to why Mulan had to hide her chi. To make things worse, she doesn't show any fear, and I'm thinking to myself, why should we care about what might happen to her? And that's not the only bad thing to be found. There is no emotional weight, and it certainly tries to have some emotional moments, but they never feel earned. Like when she gets turned away for being a woman and gets sad about it, even though it was her own choice to reveal her true identity after coming across the witch, and I'll talk more about her later. It doesn't help that most scenes are insanely rushed. Like there's no build up to Mulan going out to fight, she just leaves, and when they go to the village and see that everyone there is dead. Remember how emotionally impactful that scene was with the dramatic music and the reactions from the soldiers? Well, they pretty much just skimmed through it in this one. They're basically like, yeah, they're all dead. Well, let's move on to the next scene. Now, I'm not being one of those people who think that just because it's not the original means it automatically sucks. I'm merely bringing up the original as a way of showing why those scenes work and why these scenes don't. A remake should strive to do things differently. This is something that people seem to not understand because of nostalgia. It's just that the way it handles these changes don't make sense. Again, I'm criticizing the movie as it is. Even if the original didn't exist, this would still be considered a failure. I hope that's understandable. I'm not going to pretend like there's nothing to enjoy about it. There's a lot of cool shots in some scenes, the sets are also really cool, and I do think the fights are well choreographed. However, I'm completely taken out of the action when characters are shown running on walls. I really don't get that, and it never looks convincing. Plus, the editing is atrocious. Like, seriously some of the worst I've seen. It's hard to get a taste of these fights when it cuts to different angles multiple times in the short time span, not to mention the constant overuse of slow motion, as if it's trying to be The Matrix. Speaking of which, I watched The Matrix for the first time recently and it was really good, but you probably already knew that. The action also doesn't feel as investing this time around because they don't give us characters to really care about. The other soldiers that aren't Mulan don't really do much, except for Hong Hui, who is basically just the possible love interest for Mulan, and I just hate that they still decided to give her a love interest. This was also a problem I had with the animated film. Can't Mulan just be independent? Why give her a man? The villain, I don't remember his name. He's the leader of an army called the Rorons. I don't remember anything about him. He really isn't intimidating, and his death is just pathetic. Oh, and yeah, there's a witch character who kind of worked for him just because she wants to be somewhere where she's wanted. I liked the idea of her, but it seemed like she was only there for plot convenience. And there was the inclusion of the Phoenix, which I guess was supposed to be the replacement for Mushu, but it didn't do anything. Oh, and Mulan has a sister now, I guess. She could have been cut and nothing would have changed. While the movie tries to have a serious tone to it, it still tries to throw in some humor, but it feels very out of place and it's just painful with how the lines are delivered. The actors are given poor direction. There wasn't a single good performance. They were just so stiff. The CGI is absolutely pathetic. It looks like something that was made for TV, and keep in mind, if it weren't for the pandemic, this would have been put in theaters. The live-action Mulan is another bad Disney remake. It's just completely lifeless, it doesn't have any emotion, and it completely misses the point of what made the animated film charming. This had so much potential, it's a shame they didn't make good use of it. If they want to change things up, that's great. That's actually a good idea, but don't have the reason for her strength be because of some kind of chosen one nonsense. It makes the stakes feel non-existent. It's like their main focus was on making a war movie but forgot to include character development. There are worse movies out there, but this isn't one that I would recommend. In fact, there are a couple of movies released recently on Disney Plus that I actually do recommend. First one is The One and Only Ivan, based on the book of the same name. It's just a cute story about a talented gorilla who maybe wants to explore life outside of the circus. It's kind of predictable and some of the other animal characters aren't that useful, but it has a lot of heart to it, and the ending is very touching. I recommend giving it a watch. Next movie is Phineas and Ferb Candace Against the Universe, the new Phineas and Ferb movie that was released 5 years after the series ended. It's just a fun adventure film with hilarious jokes and a lot of thrilling moments and good songs. It's great for Phineas and Ferb fans, and if you haven't seen the show, I suggest watching a few episodes. I definitely think it's worth it. Just please do not watch Mulan. I know some people like it, but for me, I'll stick with the animated version. This one is not a movie worth fighting for.